All right, everybody. Thank you for coming. It's good to see you, Linda. We're going to get started. I first just want to say thank you to everybody who made the time to be here. No matter what you're doing at home or at work, the fact that you made time for this is really awesome, and we appreciate that you're here. My name is Allie Warner. I happen to be the chapter chair for the Northampton County chapter of Moms for Liberty. Hold on just a second. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. And I wanted to just give a few points about our chapter and what we're all about here in Northampton County. We started our chapter almost 2 years ago, and we already had been active in attending school board meetings during the pandemic. It was an interesting time. We got a little bit fired up, and I think everybody had an opinion about what was going on, and so we chose to do something about it. And when Moms for Liberty started to gain momentum, we said, you know what we're doing aligns very closely with what they're doing and their mission, which is really what drives us every day. Despite all of the articles that you hear about us, the other opinions, I can tell you straight from the heart that we are really, first and foremost, in support of parents' rights. It doesn't matter where you are on the political spectrum. What matters is that if you're a parent, a grandparent, a guardian, that you have the transparency that you need in order to defend your parental rights for your children or grandchildren. You get to make the decisions for them, not the government, not the schools, not somebody on social media. And so wherever we can, we support parents' rights. We try to uncover information, we try to do research and share. If you happen to get to our website, you'll notice we've got a ton of resources. We just released this week performance reports for every single district in Northampton County. So these are based on publicly available data from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and anybody can get this information. They're all free. They're all on our website. If you go to the back table, Nicole back there can help you if you need any help in finding it. The mission of Moms for Liberty is very, very dear to our hearts. We're dedicated to saving America by empowering parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. And how do we do this? We unify, we educate, and we empower. So that just gives you an idea of who we are. If you're interested in getting involved, if you're wondering, hey, yeah, that's all great, but what can I do, right? Because lots of times people like to walk away with an idea of action items, right? Like, what can I do to make a difference? A couple things I can rattle off the top of my head is educate yourself. There's a lot going on. It's easy to get lost. We've spent a lot of time trying to make sense of it, and it's not easy, but we're here to help you. Follow us on social media. We are constantly sharing resources, articles, ways to understand the wacky things that are happening. Join our chapter or attend a school board meeting in your district. If you happen to have time and go, just learn about how the process works. What's on the agenda? Who's making the decisions? It's really more of an approach for success is to listen and understand first. Right? We are not going to sit here and throw mud at everybody just because we want to throw a temper tantrum. But if we listen and we understand and we find that there's something that's not working or this doesn't sit right with us, then we're going to engage, ask questions, try to understand it, and then spread the word if we think that other people might be concerned. So that's just a little bit about us. The last thing I would just want to mention is the motto that we kind of say to ourselves as we're doing things and as things get hard is duty is ours and the results are God's. So everything that we do it humbly, and despite the bad press or the slander and everything else that goes on, we do know that the results are God's, and we do that to glorify Him. So with that, we have some great speakers coming today. Hold on just a second, I just want to make sure I've got messages here. I want to make sure I don't introduce anybody.
Just in just a second, they just walked in.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. We've got some great speakers today, and I think that, and I hope that you'll find that this is a valuable use of your time and an interesting conversation. Just as a side, Title IX is something that we're going to be talking about today. Title IX, was established in 1972, and then Barack Obama changed it to a certain extent during his administration, and then Betsy DeVos changed it back.
Yeah.
And then it has since been changed by our friends in the Biden administration. So this has been a hot topic. There have been some recent changes that are going to take effect on August 1st. Moms for Liberty national organization at momsforliberty.org has an amazing Title IX resource page. You can read the lawsuits that have been filed. You can read the original order, the amended order. There's probably 9 to 12 videos where there's Moms for Liberty folks and others doing interviews, explaining quickly what's changing. And I would encourage you, if you haven't ever looked at our website, to go there and check it out. There's some just really great information there. The other thing I would ask is that you tell your friends, if you have kids that have young children, if you have neighbors, friends at church, tell them what is going on. Help them understand what's changing with Title IX. It is so important. And this all goes into effect on August 1st. It's going to take a while for the lawsuits to go through the courts. And so the more people know about how their kids may be impacted, the better, because it's going to get ugly fast. All right, so I would really love to introduce our 2 guests today. We've got Dave McCormick, who is a Senate candidate in Pennsylvania and former Education Secretary. I'm so glad you're here with us. Welcome. I'm Allie Warner, just since you weren't here when I introduced myself, the chapter chair for Moms for Liberty in Northampton County. What I'd like to do is just tell the audience a little bit about both of you, but also let you introduce yourself too. So we're really excited to have both Dave and Betsy here. Dave is running for Senate in Pennsylvania. I can tell some people already
I saw a good t-shirt.
know this. Yeah, we got them representing. And Dave is a native Pennsylvanian. Now my glasses are all weird. He was raised by 2 teachers and has an impressive resume with leadership interwoven throughout. He is a dad to 6 daughters. And a devoted husband to his wife, Dina. He's a West Point graduate, and his service to America did not stop after joining the Long Gray Line. Some of his accomplishments include serving in the 82nd Airborne Division as a paratrooper. And as captain, he's a Bronze Star recipient for his service in Iraq. Thank you. Dave's experience spans the private and public sector, and in his leadership roles, he's created jobs in Pennsylvania and is no doubt a leader in everything he does. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Share.
Okay, great. Do you want me to take a minute?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, you did it beautifully. So thank you all for being here. I'm very excited to have you here, Madam Secretary, and talk about the issues of the day, particularly education. 7th generation Pennsylvania. I grew up in Bloomsburg. I was from Western Pennsylvania, and I guess all I can tell you about Pennsylvania and me is that this last weekend I spent with my dad and my brother, and my dad's got a 60-year tradition. 60 years. This was 60th year of going to all the cemeteries, 4 cemeteries in Western Pennsylvania where all our ancestors are. He's done it with my mom for 60 years straight. He promised his mom when she was dying at a young age that he would do this, and so we did it all as kids, but I hadn't done it for years, and then did it a few years ago. We did it this year together because my mom couldn't join him. And And in those graveyards, you find all these folks that were our predecessors, but you see these flags all over. Little flags, big flags, monuments. And those flags represent the people that had served in the military and kind of made Pennsylvania, made America what it is. And so I'm very proud of that connection, those generations of service of my family, and very proud to be a Pennsylvanian and running for the Senate because I feel like the country's in jeopardy and that we need good leadership. So I'm happy to be here with all of you and happy to be here with you. Thank you.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here with you this afternoon and with Dave McCormick and his campaign to represent Pennsylvania in the U.S. Senate. The issues that are so important to me and I know to this group here are ones that are really common across the country. And we know that more and more today, parents are concerned about their children's education, the experiences of their education, and in many cases, what they're being subjected to in the course of that education. And so I'm really excited to be able to be here with you today to talk about some of those issues and to really voice support for this man here to represent Pennsylvania. I know he will be an awesome voice for parents and for kids in the U.S. Senate. So, Allie, I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry, I screwed up the intros there. Betsy also has a very impressive resume. I'm going to go through it just because I made a mistake here. Geez, where do I start? One of my favorite descriptors of Betsy is disruptor. I think that has been a word that we've been hearing a lot and doesn't necessarily have a negative connotation anymore. Maybe it does to some people, but challenging the status quo, I think, is something that Betsy has shown through her performance as the 11th U.S. Secretary of Education. She served from 2017 to 2021 and championed the freedom and led the way to improve policies established by previous administrations. That's not all she did. She did away with the Title IX guidance that the Obama administration set forth, which stripped college students of their due process rights. She's also a businesswoman, a mom, a grandmother, and an author. She supports parents' rights, which we love, and has worked continuously to further our freedoms to choose what is best for our children. Her experience includes over 30 years of public policy reforms to remove government as a roadblock, to deliver to students the freedom, flexibility, resources, and support they need to choose where, when, and how they learn. Her advocacy has helped create new educational choices for K-12 students in more than 25 states in the District of Columbia and expanded post-high school grad education options for students and adult learners alike. Betsy also served as chairman of the WinQuest Group, a privately held investment and management firm based in Michigan, and she is the former chair of the American Federation for Children, the Philanthropy Roundtable, and the Michigan Republican Party. We're so glad you're here. Okay, so let's get into it. Recently, there was an article published by the Daily Caller and Fox News explaining that Bob Casey supports men playing in women's sports. Bob Casey is the current senator in Pennsylvania, and Dave is challenging him. He's called concerns about this unfounded and overgeneralized. So you have concerns about boys and girls sports, boys and girls private spaces, and he's saying this is unfounded. We know that's far from the truth, and we would like you to help everyone listening understand why the integrity of girls' athletics is at risk and the importance of protecting it.
Yeah, thank you. And then I'll turn to the secretary. There's a lot about this, but listen, as a father of 6 daughters, this one just resonates with me so much. The very idea that we'd allow biological males to compete with biological females is fundamentally unfair, and really I think will gut women's sports, gut Title IX, which was really a great development in terms of promoting women's sports, and it's unfair. And I think it's part of a broader ideological shift where this notion that our schools are introducing transgender ideology to young children before they're old enough to form their own views as adults. And so I think it's deeply troubling, and it's something that I would be completely opposed to as a senator from Pennsylvania, as a father, but more than that, as a representative of all the people of Pennsylvania, because I think it fails the common sense test on many different levels.
Well, Dave put it very well, but I'll just add to it that this is an issue that is really timely, and I hope all of you are paying close attention to it, because the rule that the Biden administration has put forward that would extend the definition of gender to include gender identity, the downstream implications of that, you can't even begin to really articulate all the different ways in which it would negatively impact everything in our culture, which already has lots of challenges, as we know. So there's an effort to raise this issue up, to have all kinds of folks across the country make sure to contact your members of Congress and urge them to put a stop to the Biden rule. And there's also, I'll be going from here to a kickoff event for a bus tour that's going to take place around the country, bringing a highlight to this on the way that the Biden Title IX rule is fundamentally unfair, and it is absolutely antithetical to the intention of the Title IX rule, which was to give women and girls equal access to their education and to sports. And so this is an issue that we have got to pay close attention to. We've got to speak up against very forcefully. And you know, Bob Casey has a chance to do the right thing, and that is to vote against implementation of this rule that the Biden administration has put forward. He's put his claim out there on where he stands, and to try to dismiss it and say that this is really not a real problem is absolutely false, and we see it every day in girls' teams, women's teams across the country.
Okay, so Dave, together you and Tina share 6 daughters. It used to be a given that females used the girls' bathrooms and males used the boys' bathrooms. Now, not so much. What can be done?
Well, first, I should have said earlier, thanks to Moms for Liberty for hosting.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome.
Great event here. On the last campaign, so thank you all for doing this. And again, I think this is something fundamental, which is we're dealing with children. And so we have responsibility as parents, responsibility as educators to protect our children and to have the values and let them develop with the help of their parents to become fully grown adults. And so to the extent that the schools are imposing an ideology on them, I think it reinforces what's flawed in our schools today. And I think gender bathrooms is just one of many things that if a parent or a children, you're putting them in a compromising position where a set of values is being imposed on their kids at the bequest of the school as opposed to the parents. And so I'm fundamentally opposed to schools engaging with our children. Gender and bathroom assignments is just one piece of it, but fundamentally opposed to them engaging with our children in a way that's trying to shape their views of who they are from a gender. That's the role of parents. The role of parents to help them become full-blown adults, to help them make that journey. And I think what's happened is our schools have been hijacked to some degree by this ideology, and it's deeply flawed. And I think what's happened is parents are awakening to that reality and getting much more engaged. So I think that's the good. which is you see parents more and more engaged. Everywhere I go on the campaign trail, I hear it, I feel it. The bad is that we've lost some real, we've lost a lot of progress, and we're going backwards in many ways in our schools. And we can talk a little bit later about some of the more dramatic things we need to do to change the future of our schools. But on this particular thing, I think schools need to essentially stay out of this debate 100%.
Well, I would just echo everything Dave said in that regard, and I know we have a lot of subject areas to get to in terms of education, but I mean, I think he's absolutely right. This is a real issue for parents to be concerned about and engaged in, and to insist on transparency on the part of the schools their children are part of, to know what's going on there. And to be able to make other choices and decisions if that is denied them.
So this next topic is related. When we use the word woke, woke is a word to use to describe critical consciousness. Right? So I'm kind of slightly treading into Marxist ideology, but this critical conscientiousness is you're woke to this oppressor versus oppressed type of ideology. These woke policies are being instituted in schools across the country, especially in liberal blue states like California and New York, and they're often implemented through state laws too. Critical race theory, which is race ideology, encourages young children to put their peers' backgrounds first and foremost in their minds rather than teaching them how to be respectful of others. So, do you have any thoughts about how we fight back?
Yeah, I think it's almost you got to sort of step back a minute. I'm a former military guy and a business person, so I sort of think of outcomes and results. And let me give you 3 snapshots of outcomes and results, which I'll tie to your question. So one outcome is, by any measure, America's secondary school system, our education system, is losing ground to the rest of the world. We're not top 10 in the world among any industrialized country in anything. We just talked about this. In anything, I think an overall number is the last estimate, some 27th in the world. This is the greatest country in the world, and we're losing steam relative. That's one, just think of that fact for a minute. Second fact, and the secretary was just reminding me of this on the bus, in terms of educational or academic achievement and closing the achievement gap. So the gap between the highest performers and the lowest performers, where we want to lift all boats through our education system, we have made no progress. In fact, we've lost progress, and that's with spending $1 trillion over the last 50 years through the Department of Education. At the federal level. So we're losing in terms of closing that. And then the third thing, just turn on the television and see those kids marching on campuses. We don't know the difference between right and wrong, the difference between good and evil. It's not just anti-Semitism, it's anti-Americanism. Only about 1/3 of them believe America is exceptional and are very deeply patriotic. Those are the byproducts, those 3 things, of the school system we have, the school systems that we have. And part of what's happening is an undermining of some basic tenets of American history in the way that history is taught. And my recollection of the history I was taught is that, by any measure, this is analytically, America has been an extraordinary success in terms of bringing people out of poverty, in terms of bringing freedom to the citizens of America and also to the world, in terms of liberating the world from Nazism, in terms of winning the Cold War. And it's been a country that has had dark chapters that we've had to overcome, we're still overcoming. It's an imperfect country, but relative to any other country in the world, it's been a great source of freedom and liberty and wealth for the world. That's the history that's unfortunately not being taught, and that shows up in our recruiting numbers, it shows up on our campuses, and it's because of, among other things, what you said, this ideology. This captures an ideology of apology for being American, apology for a gender, apology for your upbringing. And it strays so dramatically from the very concept that Martin Luther King, who we should all look to, I think, with admiration, who had the line that we wanted a society where people were judged, not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And so in the pursuit of all these ideological objectives, our school systems have lost touch with the very basis of America, in my opinion. And I think it unfortunately needs a radical change, and I hope we'll get to that. But there's no incremental way to sort of little by little fix this. This is a broken system that needs radical change and radical leadership to get things back on track. And school choice and a number of other things which we can talk about in a minute. But the root cause of it is an ideology that's hijacked the very fundamental tenets of America.
Absolutely agree with everything you said, Dave, and just add that the system to which most kids are subjected to today is essentially a monopoly.
Yeah.
Unless you have the resources to do something different, your children are in schools that are headed by a monopolistic structure, and we see from the very top of that structure, which is the teachers' unions, the AFT and the UAW, I mean, NEA, sorry. UAW is part of that too, in a certain way. But, you know, the NEA and the AFT, and then all of the allied organizations have continued to influence down to the most local level everything that has gone on in the system because it's been part of a monopoly for decades now. And that, I think, is probably a good lead into some more conversation about what we need to do about that and how we actually break that monopoly and create a different environment, a competitive environment in which the traditional system, the monopoly system, has to compete with others that are providers of a different path for kids.
Yeah, you should say,
Follow
because
up.
you're
I want to
the
follow
key
up
to
on
this.
that. So what role can the federal government have in changing what we're seeing?
So I believe the federal government has very little role, frankly, in education and should have. It was not part of the Constitution by any measure. And I'm sure most of you know the history of the Federal Department of Education. It was stood up in 1979 as a payoff to the teachers' unions by then President Jimmy Carter when he sought their endorsement in 1976. And it was brought into being for the purpose of closing the achievement gap. It sounded good. Dave alluded to the statistics on this. Over $1 trillion spent at the federal level alone, not to mention state and local, federal level alone to close the achievement gap, and the achievement gap has not narrowed in one measure at all. In fact, by many different measures, it's actually widened. And so the Federal Department of Education has continued to be essentially a political arm for this ideology that has continued to seep into the system over the last several decades to where now today we've seen it exposed and we're having open conversations about it. And I'm thankful for organizations like Moms for Liberty to really draw attention to these issues and get help parents and grandparents and friends and neighbors become aware of what's going on and speak for an alternative.
So I think that is one of the things that we are trying to do is spread the word, help people understand what, and make sense of what is going on. If you see these things, protests on TV, you're sitting there going, I really want to send my child to college. This is what's going to happen. And that's why we're fighting. So at the local level, which is where we still have a lot of work to do, we can still educate as many people as we can, empowering them to make their own decisions. But you can't really make a decision if you don't know what's going on. So I want to go back just follow up on the question around You mentioned how far behind we are as a country. We're no longer in the top 10. Why is it so important for us to fix this? And how do you see that happening?
Well, if you think about it, nothing could be more important than building the next generation of people that are going to lead us. I say on the campaign trail, you know, for a lot of us in this room, not all of us, but a lot of us in this room, what happens in this election isn't going to change our lives much, because we got more years behind us than in front of us. But the future of the country really does depend on our kids and their kids being able to lead us into the future. And if you have a generation of young people that don't believe in America, don't believe America's exceptional, don't have a true understanding of history, don't have the skills, the capabilities to take on this new generation of technologies and challenges. And we are in a complicated world, and the rest of the world's not standing idle. They are moving forward, and if we can't compete, we're going to fall behind. Right now, we're the most blessed country in the world, but that's not promised. It depends on what we do. And so what happens in schools is, it couldn't be more important. And you know, COVID in many ways was a blessing in one respect at least, where you had a lot of parents looking over the shoulders of their kids and saying, oh my God, that's the curriculum, that's what's happening in our schools, that's the quality of the teaching, that's the quality of the engagement, that's the ideological agenda that's being promoted. That is a disaster. And so I feel it everywhere I go, and today's a good example. Parents getting energized, that's awesome. I mean, that's the key. School board races, getting engaged. But there's also a structural problem, which Betsy alluded to, which is we have a monopoly. And our schools, listen, my mom and dad were both public school teachers. I went to public schools. I'm pro-teacher. I am pro-teacher. The most important people in my life were teachers and coaches that changed the course of my life. But our students and our teachers are locked in a system that's doomed to failure. Doomed to failure. And it's failing. So we can't dispute this. It is failing. And you know, when we talk about school choice, and there's no more significant supporter visionary on school choice than Betsy. But when we talk about school choice, and so thank you for what you've done on this, because the concept, the vision is becoming a reality in many states, just not in Pennsylvania yet. Just not in Pennsylvania yet. But it's the basic idea that there already is school choice for people that have money. They opt to take their kids where they want. So when we talk about school choice, we're really talking about opportunity, educational freedom for everybody. And the way to do that is to tie the dollars that we as a society, we as a community, are spending on our kids to the kid and to the parent, and give them the freedom to choose a school that's going to give them the most opportunity appropriate for their needs. That competition will create better educational outcomes. That competition will create better opportunity. That competition will create more honest curriculum. That competition is the pathway to creating equal opportunity, or opportunity for all. And so that's what we need to do. And it's happening. And Betsy knows it more than I do, but it's happening in Arkansas and Tennessee and Texas and Florida. It is happening. It can happen here in Pennsylvania. It's an issue that we can do some things. In the Senate, I can do some things to help support the school choice movement here in Pennsylvania. But what we really need is Pennsylvania officials to embrace the very idea of school choice. And that's going to change the future, the lives of our kids and their kids.
Yes, and just to add to that, I know that Pennsylvania came very close with a significant expansion of school choice education freedom. And I'm hopeful that Governor Shapiro will find the fortitude to look at it again, a second go around. But this truly will ultimately create the kind of dynamic that needs to happen to see fundamental change in the traditional system. Good example of this has been going on for several years now in Florida, where the longest running choice program, statewide choice program, has been in existence. And the more students that opt into other schools other than their assigned school, the better the educational outcomes have been, and the better the environment has been for all students in Florida. And so I'm very optimistic for Pennsylvania. I know you all are going to be a part of that, assuring that future where the money for the child, dedicated for that child's education, follows that child to the place that their parent decides is best for them to learn. And I'm also very optimistic about what that means in terms of types of educational experiences, quality of educational experience, and ultimately a return to or a revisiting of the foundations and fundamentals of our country, where schools will have to outcompete one another for the best history and civics programs because the school down the street is doing a much better job, so we're going to have to up our game to do it. That's how we're ultimately going to defeat the bad ideologies that have taken root across the country. It's by having competition and by having the choices to make those decisions to go to the places that are preparing kids in a meaningful way to be leaders in the future. And it's so great to see these two young future leaders here today. But you know, every single child, their future matters, and we need to act like that and really implement policies that demonstrate that.
Very good.
So we're going to change gears a little bit. I did make a comment about parents looking at what's going on and wondering, I know I have wondered too, what am I sending my child to in a few years? For too long, it feels like the only barometer of success was whether someone went to college. But we know that's not true. What are some career paths that position young people well financially and also fill a necessary void in communities?
Great, thank you. And I didn't see you, Sally. How are you? It's good to see you, Sally. How are you? Good friend for many years. You know, this is something I've seen and learned. When I go across Pennsylvania and I go into factories or businesses of various sorts, and I always say to them, what's your 3 biggest problems? What are the things that stand in the way of you doubling your workforce, doubling your revenue? Like, what are the big deals? Inflation. Inflation's always one of the top 3. Regulation, always one of the top 3. Skilled workers.
Yeah.
Always the third one, skilled workers. And oftentimes skilled workers number 1. Like, I could grow if I could hire 5 more people, 10 more people, 15 more people. And so we've got a real gap in Pennsylvania and nationally as the world's changing on these very great opportunities. By the way, if we could unlock our natural gas industry in Pennsylvania, right? I mean, you talk about like wonderful jobs for decades to come. Like, we're sitting on top of a treasure of natural gas reserves, the 4th largest in the world, and that would be a huge source of great jobs for many decades, very high-paying jobs that would create great opportunity. But in order to fill those jobs in fracking or in the natural gas industry or in manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, you need skilled workers. And I grew up on a college campus. My dad was a college president, Elizabeth State College. And I grew up thinking, and most of the kids there, 80% of the kids, were first-generation college goers. And their family's dream was that they could go to college. That was the American dream. If you went to college, then you'd be on a path to the great American dream for your future generations. It's not that way anymore. There's there's a great opportunity for a certain number of kids that want to go to college and need to go to college, and that's great. We should support them in doing that. But there's enormous opportunity, and we shouldn't even think about college in the same way, Betsy and I. It's not necessarily 4 years you go to a place. It's education that is pursuit of the kinds of skills and opportunities that are going to put you on a path for the future. That may be a 4-year degree of some sort. It can more often than not be some sort of advanced skills training where you get certified. You go. The most secure job in Pennsylvania today is a senior welder. Senior welder, you can't get fired. I mean, you will make a great income, and it's just too few of them. So we need to help those kids that want to be on a path to great careers with adequate skills to have the support, the training programs they need. And we need to embrace that as parents and deciding that's a great path. We need people to take on those jobs. We need to have those be great jobs where it's a business-friendly environment that supports growing those opportunities. And we need to create skilled worker training that embraces that this is going to be a huge part of our economic future. And so there's a number of things we can do. I'm a big fan of community colleges and technical schools that do this. I went and visited up in Tunkhannock recently. There's a school there for oil and natural gas that teaches these kids these great training. They go out at the age of 19 or 20, they're making 65 grand a year, 85 grand a year with overtime. Great paying jobs. And there's things we can do at the federal level. I was asking Betsy, what can I do as a senator? And there were 3 things that I think we could potentially do that would allow much more flexibility. GI Bill. I took advantage of the GI Bill coming out of the Army. I served for 9 years in the Army. I took the GI Bill. I went to graduate school with it. That GI Bill needs to be adjusted to be able to support short-term skill training for our veterans, to give them great paths for the future, right? The second would be Pell Grants that would be you'd be eligible for shorter-term skill training that would allow people to embark on these careers. And the third thing is student loans. Student loans should be adjusted to be able to take advantage of this, and we should privatize, as we were just talking about, student loans so it's not the government. And while I'm on that, if you'll give me, can you believe Biden did $168 billion of loan forgiveness? Just to put that in perspective, folks, that's the budget of the Army. That's the budget of the Army. 160. It is the most un-American thing I've ever heard of, because if you went to college and spent 6 years instead of 4, so you didn't have to take a loan, you're paying off that loan. If you didn't go to college, you went on a different path, you're paying off. We're all paying off those loans. So that's the kind of thing we need to do to help people make this transition. I think our economy's changing. I think our support of those kind of careers needs to change with it.
And I agree with everything and add to it. We need to expose kids from a much younger age to the wide range of options and alternatives there are, not just put in them the notion that in order to be successful you need to go to a 4-year college or university. There are so many opportunities today, but so many kids never learn about them because, again, the expectation, the cultural expectation has been you're on a college track and you better stay with it whether it makes sense or not. I think we need to change our view around what education and learning really is and consider learning to be a lifelong pursuit. At any time, we should be able to go back and learn some new skills to pursue a new opportunity. And we should be able to make that easy for everyone to enter and exit as they want and as their careers dictate and as their desires go. So there are a lot of ways that the federal government should get out of the way, that state government can look at ways to encourage. I think there should also be a lot more apprenticeship opportunities. We don't value and appreciate earn and learn on the job opportunities in the same way a lot of our competitive counterparts around the world do. And I think it's, for many, the best way to learn, right on the job, getting compensated while you're doing it, and gaining all the skills necessary for that particular work. And it just really requires rethinking what education looks like. We are ripe for that today because I believe, as we see what's going on in so many higher ed institutions, there are more and more families saying, I don't think this is the right path for my child, and those questions are very valid ones. Instead of just despairing, I think we take this opportunity to say, what can we do better and how can we offer more in different pathways and support those for all kids, no matter what their ultimate pursuit is. I just want to mention one example of an interesting school that I'm very familiar with. My husband started a charter high school in Michigan. Charter schools, as you know, are public dollar-supported public schools, but independently operated and run. So his charter high school is focused on aviation. It's actually located out at our airport in Grand Rapids, where I live. And it serves 9th to 12th graders, but its convening theme is aviation. Now, not all the graduates from West Michigan Aviation Academy go on into an aviation-related career, but it gives all the students there the opportunity to learn about an area that they probably wouldn't have even thought about or entertained. And interestingly, a couple dozen of the graduates every year graduate with their private pilot's license. And if you know anything about the aviation industry, there's a great demand for pilots, for mechanics, for anything and everything to do with aviation today. But it's just one example of how we can create different kinds of learning environments and opportunities for kids to take advantage of, but we have to think creatively.
So one of the things that we at Moms for Liberty, the parents, the members that are involved, one of the things that we really like learning about is what we can do at our level, right? So we've got a million things going on, driving kids around, going to jobs, all sorts of crazy stuff. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts are around, or what you could encourage people here to do when it comes to just the everyday things. You know, we talk about ideologies taught in school, which are probably taking up time that could be spent learning other things, yeah. But we encourage folks to, go to board meetings, understand what's going on, but is there any type of advice or any thoughts that you have about that? Because I think people like to walk away with knowing something that they can do to make a difference.
I mean, I'll be brief. I think the level of engagement we're seeing for school board, races, parents getting actively involved in schools is incredible. Like, I feel it. I feel it everywhere I go. I just think doubling down on that, a much more active participation from parents, seeing the curriculum, looking at it, demanding transparency, as Betsy was saying, and these issues are, there's nothing more fundamental. So I think that that level of engagement at the community level is critical. And it's a self-serving point, but we get the leadership we deserve. We get the leadership we deserve. So I hope it's for me, but if it's not for me, whoever you believe is going to represent you as Pennsylvanians and as parents, as people that want to change the direction of the country for the better, you need to get out there and vote. And you would not believe, and I won't do it in this room, but you would not believe how often I get in a room like this and people are animated. They're like, man, we got to change stuff. And then respectfully, how many people voted last time around? You'd be surprised at how few hands go up. So, you've had politicians coming in and out of your lives, I'm sure, and saying this is the most important election of your lifetime. But at least for me, it is. That's why I'm running. It really is that important. And I think electing people that you believe are going to ferociously defend the values that you most hold dear is key. And if you don't vote, you don't get out there and tell your friends to vote and tell your kids and your neighbors and everybody else to vote, then shame on you. You're going to end up with something you may not be happy with. And so I know that sounds like a simple civic message, but it's shocking how much people complain and don't vote. So I hope you all vote. Thank you.
Ditto that. I hope you all vote. I trust you will all vote, and I hope that you will encourage friends and neighbors to vote. Pay attention to who's representing you at the most local level. Support the ones who are reflective of the direction you want to go. Same thing at the state level. At the state level, you have a real opportunity to change the policies around education and to allow for parents to be much more in control and in charge of your child's education. Add your voices to that. And then at the federal level, this whole issue that we started out with on Title IX and all of the implications of the Biden rule around that. Members of Congress we hope, are going to be put in a place of having to vote for implementing this rule or not. Make sure that yours hear from you and encourage your friends and neighbors to make sure they express their voices on this as well. Your voices are important, and your participation in actually casting votes and the elections to decide on that next representation are critically important. But thank you for the way in which you are expressing your concerns and your desire to see something better and different for kids and grandkids, because what you're doing is important, and your voices matter a lot, and I'm thankful to see what's happening here in Pennsylvania around that.
I think we're finishing up here, so I just wanted to say again, thank you, Betsy DeVos, for being here. Great, her and her husband have been great supporters of mine, and my wife Dina. My wife Dina worked in the Trump administration with Secretary DeVos, and she's a great American who has literally been a guiding voice for taking our education system, for education freedom, for the kind of America and kind of education system we need. So thank you for all you've done, thank you for all you're doing, and thank you very much for hosting everything.
Okay, so thanks very much for being here. Thanks for sharing these insights. It's been great. Thank you, everybody. So as we wrap up, just want to make a comment about the big bus outside. So Dave's campaign bus, it has all of the wording on the side, is outside, and anybody that's interested in going out there to sign the bus is welcome to. Also, if you didn't grab a water on your way in, you can grab one too.
Please sign. I'll tell you just a 30-second story. I'll tell you a 30-second story on the bus. So when I was thinking about this campaign and decided I wanted to run a retail campaign where I really got in all these communities in this bus, and the political consultant said, no bus, no bus. Buses are a bad idea. My wife said, absolutely no bus. So I bought the bus. But our daughters are away at college for the most part, so we sent them a picture of the bus. And we sent a picture of the one side, and they're like, oh my God, that is like huge, McCormick this, McCormick that, big red, white, blue, too much is too much. And then my one daughter said, but thank God it doesn't have your picture on it. So then we sent a picture of the other side of the bus, which is an 8-foot picture. And my wife leaned over and said, you have to have a hell of an ego to have an 8-foot picture. So if you'd all sign the bus, we'd be grateful. The bus is 42,000 miles in the last 3 months. It's a lot of miles, right? There'll be a lot more before this is over. Thank you.
Awesome. We're not taking questions. Sorry.
We can walk. No, we'll just visit on the way out.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.